jail is on the floor going down at this point, isn't he?
Yes.
Okay, and that's you shooting him, right?
Yes.
Look at the screen, sir.
Yes.
That's you shooting him?
Yes.
I want y'all to know that y'all convicted and had a wrong man in prison.
Your son is the victim and the killer is your granddaughter. Can you talk about that?
I am not sorry for something I didn't do, and I am not sorry for the things I did do.
This is Joe Cerna, inside the county courthouse in Fayetteville, North Carolina. He was arrested for drunk driving. As part of his probation, he wasn't allowed to drink. So when he lied about a recent urine test, Judge Lou Oliveira felt he had no choice.
Joe, a night in jail because he had to be held accountable.
It was just one night, but as he entered the cell, Joe says he knew it would be one of the longest nights of his life.
When I walked into the jail cell and they closed the door behind me, I started feeling this anxiety.
It came back?
It came back, a flashback.
Retired Army Sergeant First Class Joe Cerna did 3 tours in Afghanistan and has 2 Purple Hearts to show for it. The Green Beret survived an IED and a suicide bomber. But he says his scariest moment was the night he was riding in a truck with 3 other soldiers.
We were following the creek, and the road gave way. And the vehicle went in the creek.
Truck started filling with water?
Yeah. All hope was lost.
Joe felt the water rising past his legs, then waist and neck, until finally it stopped at his chin.
How many guys got out of that truck?
Alive?
Yeah.
Just me. I was a sole survivor.
Joe says it still haunts him.
So I suffer from PTSD.
Among his issues, a fear of being in small, cramped places.
I knew what Joe was going through, and I knew Joe's history, and he had to be held accountable, but I just felt I had to go with him. I felt I had to go with him.
And so a few minutes after Joe was locked up, Judge Lou Oliveira surprised the man he sent to jail by joining him for the entire night.
We ate meatloaf, and we talked about a lot of things.
We talked about our families.
And the walls got further apart?
The walls just they didn't exist anymore. He brought me back to North Carolina from being in a truck in Afghanistan. That meant so much to me, sir.
I know. It was the best experience, that we could make of the situation, and I'm glad we did it together.
Joe promised the judge no more mess-ups.
I don't want to let you down, ever.
We address the issue. We address the root of the problem. Then we don't have to incarcerate. And they shouldn't be incarcerated. They should be held accountable like everyone else. But they've served their country. And if we determine and realize what was the cause of that, it's financially the smart thing to do. Morally, it's what we should do.
You know it's not how law and order usually works. But sometimes jail is not what a man needs. Sometimes the best sentence is compassion. This is 80-year-old Dolores Shinus in the Broward County Bond Court in Fort Lauderdale.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Mr. Shanus, Abraham Arthur Shanus, and I have been legally divorced for 31 years, and I have the papers to prove it.
She landed herself in jail for resisting arrest after violating a restraining order filed by her ex-husband.
We both resided at 20 Bend, and he paid for the apartment entirely. His assumption is because he paid for the apartment, he's entitled to do as he pleases.
I can't get in the middle of who owns the apartment.
I know, that's not the point. The point I'm telling you.
I need to keep you away from him, all right?
I haven't bothered him for 31 years. Why would I bother him now?
Rather than actually getting up in arms, Judge John Hurley decides to release Shinus on a personal recognizance bond, so long as she agrees to stay away from her ex-husband.
You are not allowed to call him, text him, email him. You are to stay 500 feet from him at all times. That's where he lives, where he works, anywhere in between. Ma'am, you're getting a second chance on this case. I don't particularly feel like keeping an 80-year-old woman in the jail who has no criminal record. But this is your second warning. Don't go around him again.
I swear to God and all that's holy on a stack of Bibles, I will never go near him, talk to him, call him, or
What was
even
the
look
first
at him.
thing you were going to swear on besides the Bibles?
All that's holy.
What?
I don't remember.
Oh.
What?
All that's holy.
What?
All that's holy. Yeah.
Oh, all that's holy. Yes, sir. I didn't recognize your twang.
The senior's sassy remark catches Judge Hurley off guard.
Ma'am, have you ever thought of doing a stand-up routine? Have you ever thought about that?
I did. If you pay me good money, sweetheart, I'll be there. I'm really short of funds.
Ma'am, I got to tell you something. You seem like you have a great wit about you.
I do, sir.
Yeah, so...
I mean, sweetheart, that's the only thing I have.
I've been called sweetheart in this courtroom.
Does that mean you're taking me for breakfast?
Let me ask you something, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
How have I done as a judge today? So far, how am I doing?
Not bad, but you could do better.
Can we get a drum roll with this?
With the case already wrapped up, the only thing the judge, the public defender, and all the other inmates are waiting for is one final punchline.
I got to tell you, you brighten my day, ma'am. All right?
That's what the last guy said, and then he sued me.
She's just a really funny, sincere, kind of not holding anything back kind of lady, and she really charmed the whole courtroom. She really had us all in stitches.
But when Shyness's daughter, who lives in New York, arrived in court, all the joking ceased.
She's very entertaining one moment, and the next moment she's threatening to, take you down.
Beth Shyness has shined a light on a dark subject.
My mother has mental disability, and she needs a hospital, not a jail, and she needs to be put into a hospital, and I've been trying to do that for 6 months to no avail in the state of Florida.
With few options and even fewer alternatives, the judge decided to send Shyness for a mental health evaluation.
And it's not going to be any harm to you, but they're going to take a look at you and come to a determination, probably today or tomorrow, and then you'll
I would say today, sir.
After getting an evaluation, Dolores Shyness Beth was placed in a mental health facility.
Oh, hello, sweetheart. You look fantastic tonight. Did you grow a few inches? Because you look taller.
The court is going to order that you be taken to the nearest Baker Act receiving facility.
This is Trey Alexander Relford. He is in Lexington, Kentucky for his sentencing. He's pled guilty to the 2015 murder and robbery of Salahuddin Jitmud, a 22-year-old who'd been delivering pizzas. Jitmud was making his final delivery of the night when Relford and 2 accomplices lured him into their apartment complex, then robbed and stabbed him to death.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Before Relford receives his sentence, the victim's father, Sombat Jitmud, a school principal and devout Muslim, speaks directly to the man who murdered his son.
Trey Alexander Relford, I feel so sad for you that you have to be in this situation. I wish I could help you, as I help my son to be a good citizen. If Salahuddin were to be here, if he alive, he would forgive you. That's the way he was. That's the way he is. I'm not angry at you for being part of hurting my son. I'm angry at the devil. I blame the devil who misguiding you and misleading you to do such a horrible crime. No, I don't blame you. I'm not angry at you at all. I want you to know that. I forgive you on behalf of Salahuddin and his mother.
Before Judge Kimberly Bunnell delivered her sentence, there was still one person left to speak.
Mr. Relford, do you wish to make a statement?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry about what happened that day. But I do applaud you, because it takes a powerful man to know that somebody has hurt them and do what you, get up there and say what you just said. I have a child. She is 4. And I can imagine the hurt, the pain from losing her. Just tell us I can do it. Well, I thank you for your forgiveness.
Now Salahuddin family open heart, Catholic, forgive him because God said in the Holy Quran, Allah, Almighty God, is the most forgiving and the most merciful. So I did forgive you.
Chief, how extraordinary was this, in your experience, to see a father extend forgiveness?
One, I think it was something for every parent to see, and how fortunate these young men are to have such a role model and a father and a leader in a community that actually gives guidance and a path. And I think that's what we saw in this. We had 2 really good families that came together that did not know each other over some tragedy. We spoke yesterday when he came in from Thailand. We had lunch, and we were thankful for one thing, that such a horrific tragedy brought us so close as friends. Of being with each other.
And now it's time for the judge to announce her sentence.
Mr. Relford, an incredibly horrible event happened that has changed the lives of 2 families forever. Nothing can fix it. I am going to accept the Commonwealth's recommendation. Murder, 25 years. And I truly wish for you the very best. Thank you.
Trey Relford received 25 years for murder and an additional 6 years for robbery. This is Kirsten Lobato. She served 16 years in prison for a murder she did not commit. At 18 years old, she was charged with the brutal murder of a homeless man in Las Vegas. She was first convicted of first-degree murder, but on a retrial, she was convicted on the lesser charges of voluntary manslaughter and sentenced to 13 to 45 years. And after spending 16 years behind bars, a new hearing was presented with evidence that confirmed the actual day of the victim's death was when Lobato was 3 hours away with her family, proving that Lobato could not have possibly committed these crimes. This is Lobato outside for the first time as a free woman.
I feel overwhelmed, I feel excited, I feel grateful. I'm so happy.
Lobato has filed a lawsuit against the Las Vegas Police Department, and her compensation claim is ongoing.
Where'd you now?
Okay, well, we got more people coming too.
This is Dejan Brown. He is facing murder charges related to the death of his girlfriend, Nitisha Lattimore, and the death of her 3-year-old son, Nilo, in December 2020. Police said Nitisha was stabbed multiple times, and her remains were found in a body bag near the river. The child's body has not been found, but police believe Brown tossed the boy into the river. Dejan Brown was sitting in a courtroom in Ohio for a motion hearing when the grieving father attacked the man accused of killing his son and his son's mother. Nilo's father, Tonio Hughes, ran to the defense table where he began to punch Mr. Brown in the head. Mr. Hughes was later pinned to the ground by deputies.
Base, can we get back up at 560 now? Scott?
He tried to get back up again and attack Dejan, but authorities managed to get him out of the courtroom. If convicted, Deshaun Brown could face the death penalty. As for the father, he was found in contempt of court and was sentenced to 7 days behind bars at the local Hamilton County Justice Center.
Each holiday, each moment, each season that goes by is very painful because, like I said, we miss our daughter, we miss our grandson. We feel empty without them.
This is Martez Abram, who is convicted on 2 counts of murder for the killings of 2 Walmart employees in South Haven, Mississippi. Abram had worked at the Walmart, but was faced with a suspension after he apparently had a knife on him in the store. The day he was suspended, he returned to the store with multiple weapons and opened fire, killing store managers Anthony Brown and Brandon Gales.
He was laying on the ground with his eyes open, and I ran up to him and I looked at him. I said, "Anthony, honey, please say KC one more time."
He also shot an officer who survived due to his bulletproof vest.
Once I got out of my vehicle, I heard gunshots and I felt the pressure of the bullets hit my back.
He was arrested on site. Now in court, Abram admits to all crimes.
That's you, isn't it, sir?
Yes.
Look at it, please, sir.
Yes.
Mr. Gale is on the floor going down at this point, isn't he?
Yes.
Okay, and that's you shooting him, right?
Yes.
Look at the screen, sir.
Yes.
That's you shooting him?
Yes.
Can you admit that you shot him in cold blood?
Yes.
You shot him again, didn't you?
Yes.
After that, you went back to the toilet paper aisle, didn't you?
Yes.
This is one of the victim's wife, delivering a victim impact statement.
You took Anthony from me on the exact day, 20 years earlier, that we had our first date.
And now, this is when the judge will decide Abram's fate.
In count 1, I will sentence you to death. Count 2, you will be sentenced to death. In count 3, you will be sentenced to life in the penitentiary.
As Abram hears that he will be receiving the death penalty, he stands silently, where he now sits on death row awaiting his execution. This is Ronnie O'Neill. He is a double murder suspect in Riverview, Florida.
If you think I'm here to play around with y'all, God damn it, I'm not.
O'Neill was 29 when he fatally shot his then-girlfriend, Kenyatta Barron. Following this, he murdered their own daughter by striking her multiple times with a hatchet. She was only 9 years old. O'Neill also stabbed their 8-year-old son before pouring gasoline all over the house and setting it on fire. O'Neill was arrested upon fleeing the burning house. The son was able to escape, but was critically wounded and suffered from burns. The first 911 call on the incident was from the girlfriend, who was heard screaming before suddenly hanging up. 8 minutes later, another call came in from O'Neill.
911, what is your emergency? Hey, I just been attacked by some white demon inside Kiki. Kiki, her name is Kiki, and she tried to kill me. Huh?
After the arrest, O'Neill was psychologically cleared to represent himself in court. During the trial, he cross-examined his now 11-year-old son, who he stabbed, to which the son explained everything that happened.
It's good to see you, man.
Good to see you too.
Did I hurt you that night of this incident?
Yes.
I did. And how did I hurt you?
You stabbed me.
O'Neill also accused the prosecution of fabricating evidence.
Because he's playing a fraudulent damn recording of me beating Kenyatta Barron. I did kill Kenyatta Barron.
After O'Neill was found guilty at his sentencing, the judge went on to say this was the worst case she's ever seen.
This is the worst case ever in my life, and I have seen some horrors.
He also stated that he was not sorry for what he did.
I am not sorry for something I didn't do, and I am not sorry for the things I did do.
O'Neill was given a total of 3 life sentences, plus 90 years without parole. And for O'Neill's son, he was adopted by the detective who cared for him the night of the murders. This is Mackenzie Sharilla. She's a 17-year-old who was found guilty of murder for causing a car crash that killed her boyfriend and his friend.
Mackenzie decided death was the ultimate goal that day. This was not reckless driving. This was murder.
Sharilla's boyfriend Dominic Russo and his friend Davin Flanagan were in the car when she crashed into the side of a commercial building outside of Cleveland, going 100 miles per hour. Both men were pronounced dead at the scene, and Sharilla survived. Prosecutors argued that the teen had a toxic relationship, and Sharilla had made violent threats against her boyfriend.
Threatened his property? She threatened to break into his house?
Correct.
Reportedly, she crashed her car on purpose because she wanted to kill her boyfriend, and that his friend was just collateral damage. The prosecutor said the intent was obvious upon seeing that video, that there was only one goal.
You see her driving very calmly and making the right turn, and then all evidence indicates she immediately put the pedal to the metal and drove straight into a building at 100 miles per hour. I think those really demonstrated to us that this was no accident.
And a few days before the crash, she allegedly took the same route to plot the crime. This is where the judge now finds her guilty.
Count 1. Finds the defendant, Mackenzie Sharilla, guilty of murder, to wit Dominic Russo.
She now stands up to be placed in handcuffs as she continues to tear up.
Count 2. Finds the defendant, Mackenzie Sharilla, guilty of murder, to wit Davion Flanagan.
Now has a moment to speak before her sentencing.
The families of Dom and Davion, I'm so deeply sorry. I hope one day you can see I would never let this happen or do it on purpose. I wish I could remember what happened. I'm just so sorry. I'm heartbroken.
There was no medical condition that caused this as an accident. There was no mechanical failure of the car. A failed suicide attempt is not a defense to murder. There's a very good likelihood, Mackenzie, that you will spend the rest of your life in prison. She's sentenced on count 1, 15 years to life. Count 2, 15 years to life, to be served concurrent to each other.
Just sentenced her to 15 years to life in prison. This is John Bunn. He spent 27 years wrongfully convicted of murder.
I'm an innocent man, Your Honor, and I have always been an innocent man, Your Honor.
While living in Brooklyn, New York, Bunn was only 14 years old when he was arrested by NYPD Detective Louis Scarcella. Bunn later spent 16 years behind bars and then 11 years out on parole, where he still fought to prove his innocence. Then finally, his conviction was overturned based on the wrongdoing of Detective Scarcella and the fact that there wasn't even probable cause to arrest Bunn in the first place.
I want y'all to know that y'all convicted and had a wrong man in prison.
And after 27 years of fighting to clear his name, he is finally exonerated.
I want to say thank you, Your Honor, because in 27 years, I've been fighting for my life.
But before he leaves the courtroom, he has a moment with the judge. Bunn later filed a lawsuit against the city of New York and Detective Scarcella. This is Dylan Shoemaker in a Buffalo, New York courthouse. He's at his sentencing after being convicted of second-degree murder. At age 16, Shoemaker was babysitting his girlfriend's child when she went to work that evening. He was inside a Springville home that he shared with his parents. Later that evening, Shoemaker beat the 23-month-old child, and a result of his injuries, that young child died. Dylan Shoemaker would later be arrested and charged with the murder of the toddler, along with child abuse charges. Shoemaker was reportedly trying to get the child to stop crying, and he never wanted to hurt the child or for him to die. But the jurors didn't buy it, and Shoemaker was convicted of second-degree murder. Now, watch closely as Shoemaker enters the courtroom. Before he could even get set up behind the defense table, he starts crying and telling everyone how sorry he is.
I didn't mean to kill Oscar. Actually, I really didn't. I really think I did that. I didn't mean to hurt him.
When Shoemaker was awaiting his trial, he had a phone call with his mother, and the conversation ended up being recorded. Now listen to the judge on what Shoemaker said to his mother.
In a phone call to your mother from the holding center, you stated, and I got a quote from the court reporter, I am a 16-year-old blonde. Probably all I have to do is cry in front of the jury, and they're going to feel sorry for me.
I can't take back what was done. I wish I could. I would give my life for Austin.
Shoemaker was later sentenced to the maximum punishment.
That you be sentenced to an indeterminate term of imprisonment, which will have a maximum of life. The court hereby imposes a minimum sentence of 25 years.
But that sentence was later modified to 18 years to life.
Did you think you would die in prison?
Yes. And I had visions of the prison gates opening up. And I'm walking through them.
This is Vincent Simmons. He's been wrongly imprisoned for 44 years.
Bringing you the story today of a man who has spent decades in prison for a crime he says he did not commit. His name is Vincent Simmons.
Back in 1977, he was convicted of attempted aggravated rape.
He raped 2 of us, and he put us in a trunk to die. He had me write our names down, and he told us he was going to kill us. And we believed every word of it. And we were not going to tell anyone. Our plan was we were going to die with this.
Time to let him go, y'all.
When the shackled Vincent Simmons arrived at the Ovoils Parish Courthouse in a prison van, he was carrying a Bible. And when his accusers, Karen and Sharon Sanders, the twins that he was convicted of sexually assaulting when they were 14 years old, walked to the courthouse, they paused to pray.
We called him Simmons all night. There's so many things about that night. He gave us his name.
When you were questioned by the sheriff,
yes,
you never gave the name Simmons.
No, we did not.
You never described what he looked like.
No, we did not.
You said all
blacks look alike.
And you said all N-words.
That's right. Sure did.
So how are we to square the fact that that night you couldn't explain anything? You didn't have his name, you didn't know what he looked like, but now you're telling me today, and you testified at trial, that his name was Simmons.
That's right.
How does that happen?
Okay, this is how it happens. We had all 3 swore to each other that we would not tell a soul.
May I ask you, with all due respect?
Yes.
Why did you make that pact to not say anything? Why
We
wouldn't
were
you
scared.
immediately report it?
Because we were scared. He told us that he had friends and that he would come back to kill us if we told anybody.
Simmons had been in prison for 44 years and tried for most of that time to get his conviction overturned.
You've done this 16 times, at least.
Yes.
So this would be 17. You think this will be the time?
Yes, sir.
Simmons was about to face a judge who had recently examined information that was available in 1977, but it was not presented at his trial. That was information that he and his attorneys believed may have changed his conviction for attempted aggravated rape.
One of the attorneys, who was Vincent's defense attorney at the time of trial, says they never knew that the coroner said you were a virgin, that the coroner said there was no evidence of sexual assault found on either one of you.
Okay, well,
They didn't know that.
Well, it's 2 weeks later, and it's still not important. The fact is, he still attempted, and he wasn't successful, so he still raped me, and he did rape her.
So how do you react, though, when the report essentially says there
I don't
was
care,
no
because
evidence of sexual assault?
Because it doesn't matter. There was. Because we know. By now, I think if we were lying, we would have given up. But I'm not giving up.
It took less than an hour for Judge Billy Bennett to say that there had been a lapse in Louisiana justice in 1977.
You free, brother. You free.
You're free. Done.
And that Vincent Simmons deserves a new trial.
There's no physical evidence that connects him to that crime. There's no blood, there's no semen, there's no hairs, there's nothing.
And listen, Vincent served 44 years here at Louisiana State Penitentiary, but he was supposed to serve 100. That was the sentence. For the last 30 or so years, he kept trying to tell judges, I didn't get a fair trial, and here's the information, and they just dismissed him left and right. Get out of here, get out of here. But yesterday, there was a judge who said to him, I believe that you did not get a fair trial. In fact, that judge's daddy, nearly 30 years ago, dismissed Vincent's attempt. But this judge said, your rights were denied, they were violated, and you get a fair trial.
And that is when the shackles came off of his feet. The district attorney said he will not retry Simmons.
I'm so happy to see you.
His accusers, Sharon and Karen Sanders, now 59 years old, decided to stand down.
He went in guilty. He's guilty now. And guess what? He will die guilty.
You ready?
So I'm happy.
Yeah.
I got 44 years.
All right.
Let's go.
What was that moment like for you when you realized that what the judge said meant you were a free man?
Yeah, it dawned on me. This is it. You know? Man, we've been waiting all these years for this.
You'll turn 70 on Thursday.
On Thursday.
Did you think you would die in prison?
Yes. And I had visions of the prison gates opening up. And I'm walking through them.
Are you mad at anyone?
No, I'm not mad.
So you're not mad at the women?
No. I'm not mad at them. I mean that. When I told them I forgive them, that's what I mean. Forgiveness.
But before he could be free, a remarkable thing happened. Louisiana prison officials required that the shackles go back on, so he could go back to prison to be processed.
I'm just telling you, he's a free man.
His lawyer pushed back.
You can't be in jail tonight like that. That's not like that would not be a good thing.
The victory!
He would load up again and travel another 2 hours back to Louisiana State Penitentiary, the largest maximum security prison in the nation, where at sunset, Vincent Simmons walked out of the place he has been held in since he was 25 years old.
Hey, man, I want to...
The judge said on the bench yesterday, I want to be clear, I'm not telling you that Vincent Simmons is guilty or innocent. I'm just telling you he deserves a new trial. When the district attorney stood up almost immediately and said, Judge, we're not going to retry him, that meant the charges at that moment were dropped. When Vincent walked out of here last night, he said he wanted a crawfish dinner. So he got it. What's next for him? He says he wants to leave Louisiana and start again somewhere else.
As Simmons tries to adapt to a free world he left nearly half a century ago, his legal team just set up a GoFundMe page for Simmons. All he walked out of prison with were the clothes on his back. This is Daniel Villegas. He spent 18 years in prison for a double homicide he never committed. In El Paso, Texas, Villegas was arrested at 16, where an El Paso detective reportedly threatened him with beatings and the death penalty if he did not confess. And the teenage Villegas signed a confession that was prepared by the detectives. He tried to withdraw his confession a few hours after, but by then, it was too late. He was charged with 2 counts of capital murder. With the false confession being the only piece of evidence, the jury was unable to agree on a verdict. Villegas had a retrial, and the jury returned a guilty verdict, and he was given a life sentence. After spending 18 years in prison, the verdict was thrown out, and Villegas remained out on bond, where he got married and started a family. But now we're in the 3rd trial.
If the defendant will please stand.
This is the moment that Villegas will find out if he'll go home with his family or be sent back to prison to serve his life sentence.
The state of Texas versus Daniel Villegas. Verdict form B. We, the jury, find the defendant Daniel Villegas not guilty of...
Villegas is now a free man.
You are no longer under any conditions. You are free to leave.
Reportedly, Villegas has filed a lawsuit against the city of El Paso. This is Deborah Melky. She was sentenced to death and spent 22 years on death row for a crime she did not commit in Phoenix, Arizona.
During this whole tragedy, I was angry. Of course I am. I still am. But I can't change anything. All I can do is learn how to live with it.
Melky's 4-year-old son was found dead in a desert, being shot 3 times. Melky was questioned by Detective Armando Soldat Jr., which was not recorded or reported at all. He claimed that Melky admitted to arranging the murder.
She then decided that it'd be best for Christopher Melky to die.
She was then charged with first-degree murder, despite no actual record of her admitting to the crime.
My innocence did not matter in their pursuit of a conviction.
The state determined she had masterminded the shooting, and she was sentenced to death. Over 20 years later, questions started to get asked regarding Melky's confession to Detective Saldate, which Melky still denies ever giving.
I had absolutely nothing to do with the brutal murder of my son, Christopher, and I did not give a confession to Mr. Saldate.
Reportedly, the court found that Detective Saldate had a long list of lying under oath and violating individual rights while interrogating. Melky's alleged confession was the only direct evidence linking her to the crime. And finally, 24 years after the arrest and facing the death sentence, Her conviction gets overturned. Listen as she shares her thoughts for the wrongful conviction.
Losing a child to murder is a devastating tragedy. Being falsely accused of a crime you didn't commit is also a devastating tragedy. Try to imagine that. What happened to me could happen to any one of you.
Melky now walks out a free woman.
There's still a lot of people think that you were responsible for the killing of your son. Anything you can say about that?
To people who still think she's guilty, the Ninth Circuit and the Arizona Court of Appeals both reviewed this case thoroughly. And they said that this was egregious prosecutorial and police misconduct that constituted a severe stain on our justice system. And that's the truth of what happened in Deborah's case.
What would you like to say to the detective?
I don't know how you could look at yourself in the mirror every day, knowing that you falsely arrested somebody, you accused me of something I did not do. You didn't even have the decency to have a witness in the room, to do your job the right way. The only reason you didn't do your job the right way and didn't have a witness in the room is because you walked in that room and you knew what you were going to do to me.
There are no reports of Melky receiving any compensation. This is Markeith Lloyd, who is convicted of murdering a police officer in Orlando, Florida.
Have anything you want to say for yourself?
Lloyd was already on the run from the police after he killed his former girlfriend, who was pregnant with his child. A month later, Lloyd is spotted in a Walmart. You can see him walking in. Moments later, Orlando Police Lieutenant Deborah Clayton pulls in. You can see her grab a cart and walk in. Reportedly, they cross paths every few minutes. Outside the store, Lieutenant Clayton was notified, and she tried to stop and arrest Lloyd. When a shootout begun, Lieutenant Clayton was killed during the interaction. Being shot 4 times following the murder, Lloyd took off again, which led to a 9-day manhunt, where he was later found. During the arrest, he tried to escape, where he lost his left eye in the altercation. Here in court, Lloyd took the stand. Reportedly, he believed everyone was out to kill him.
And I was just reacting, Mayor. I was just reacting. Even when they opened the door, I just reacted. I just reacted. I fired 2 shots, I just reacted.
The jury then found him guilty.
It really hurts deep down inside.
This is Lieutenant Clayton's sister giving a victim impact statement.
She stood in the place as my mother when I didn't have one. I truly miss my sister. I truly miss her.
And this is the moment that Lloyd hears, that the jury unanimously recommends the death sentence.
We, the jury, unanimously find that the defendant, Markeith Lloyd, should be sentenced to death. Right. Why don't we remove Mr. Lloyd from the courtroom?
The judge later agreed with the jury and sent Lloyd to death, where he now sits behind bars waiting for his death sentence.
When I asked who was there, who is that, a man very quickly jumped up on my bed and straddled me and put a knife to the left side of my throat and told me to shut up, or he would kill me.
Under the sign that says love, our best friends, Ronald Cotton and Jennifer Thompson.
There's no way to explain it. It's just, I mean, our relationship was very organic in this very strange way.
Strange way and powerful. Their story begins in 1984, when Jennifer was a college student in North Carolina.
It was July of 1984. I was a student at Elon College. As I was sleeping, a man jumped up on my bed, and I knew that he was going to rape me, and I felt pretty confident he was going to kill me.
For about 20 minutes, Jennifer was raped.
I did. I made 2 decisions that night. One is I wasn't going to die. Not there, not like that. And that if I lived, I was going to pay attention to every detail about his face and remember everything that I could in those moments where I could look at his face and remember all the details about the face. I would burn it into my mind.
Jennifer eventually escaped and made her way to the police, where she used that image burned in her mind for an artist to create this sketch. Soon, police had a suspect and showed Jennifer a bunch of photos.
And as I'm looking over the photographs, and for me there was 6, I was able to discount 4, came down to 2, and I picked up one that I said, this is the man. And they said, are you sure? I'm positive. And they showed the back of it, and they looked at me and said, good job. That's who we thought it was. And that was incredibly powerful for me because I wanted to do a good job. I wanted to help pull this person off the street.
A few days later, police put Jennifer through an in-person suspect lineup.
And again, I was given the instructions, don't feel compelled to choose anyone. Suspect may or may not be in there. But I picked number 5. We were on a piece of paper. And the officer said, that's who you picked out in the photograph. And again, that was very confirming for me that I had gotten it right, that I was a good victim.
So how confident were you?
Oh, I was 100%. Absolutely positive that I had gotten the right guy.
That guy she said she was 100% sure about, number 5, was Ronald Cotton.
One day they come and get me and take me to the Burleson Police Department for a physical lineup, and they put those charges on me. I'm sitting in my cell thinking, what did I do to deserve something like this?
Ronald went to trial. Jennifer again identified him in court. It took a jury 4 hours to convict him, and a judge sentenced him to life.
I was just overwhelmed with relief. I mean, this man was going to be taken off the streets, and he would never, ever hurt another woman again.
11 years went by. Cotton maintained his innocence. In 1995, Jennifer was asked to give a DNA sample.
So I gave him the blood, and off it went to the lab, and I did not think about it until June of 1995, when they came back and looked at me and said, Ronald Cotton never raped you. It was a man by the name of Bobby Poole.
And what went through your head when they told you that?
I just couldn't understand it.
Not only had Jennifer identified the wrong man while Cotton was in prison, Poole went on to rape other women.
I just really began to suffocate and was just paralyzed.
Just with guilt?
With everything. Guilt, fear, shame, confusion, anger, disbelief, and me. It was really one of the hardest things. It was much harder than the night I was raped.
It took 2 years for Jennifer to get the courage to meet the man she helped wrongfully convict.
Wharton told me, Cotton, he said, you're going home in the morning. You're an innocent man.
I asked for a private meeting between Ronald and myself, and I just looked at him and I said, if I spent every second of every minute of every hour of every day for the rest of my life telling you I'm sorry, can you ever forgive me? And he started to cry, and I had been sobbing, and he took my hand and he said, I forgave you years ago.
I said, all I want is good things, for me, for you, your family, my family, peace and happiness.
And we became friends that day.
Jennifer and Ronald now travel the country telling their story. They even have a book out, Picking Cotton. Jennifer says she's even forgiven her rapist, who died in prison.
Now, when you picture the person who was raping you, who do you see?
Nobody. And that's the most beautiful thing of them all. It just isn't there.
Jennifer's message is one of love and forgiveness, but also the flaws in the criminal justice system, including eyewitness identifications, which cause about 34 of all wrongful convictions proven through DNA.
When we are doing it wrong, we are really failing everybody. We're failing a community because there's no trust. We're failing the defendant and the defendant's family. We're failing the victim and the victim's family. And so it doesn't make any sense why we don't want to use the best practices that we know. It doesn't make any sense at all.
Jennifer believes she would not have identified the wrong person if police had used a double-blind lineup. That's when the officer conducting the search does not know who the suspect is or which photo the witness is even looking at.
We've gone all across the United States to talk about wrongful convictions and what happens to our exonerees, and about eyewitness ID. But more importantly, we really talk about restorative justice and healing and forgiveness.
And it's just amazing the people, how excited they get by the things that Jennifer and I have done.
It's something that we thought was the right thing to do, but to know that it's really made a difference is huge.
It makes me feel very proud. It's a blessing in disguise.
"14 years, 4 months, In 19 days, I've been incarcerated. 10 years, 3 months of them in death row.
It started in 2004 when the Honduran immigrant was accused of killing 2 women.
So it's the case of this guy named Clemente Aguirre. And if I tell you this story, you'll say, you got to be making this shit up. It can't be true.
A man who was sentenced to die, literally was on death row, has had all charges against him dropped.
On June 25, 2004, in Altamonte, Florida, 24-year-old Clemente was indicted on charges of first-degree murder and burglary, a crime that he did not commit.
From the start, Aguirre Harkin said he found the women dead, that he tried to help, and that's how their blood got on his clothes and his footprint.
It was a gruesome crime that found his neighbors 68-year-old Carol Barais and 47-year-old Cheryl Williams stabbed to death.
I didn't do it. I don't kill my...
However, despite Clemente protesting his innocence, police decided he was the only possible suspect, and he was sentenced to death. In the 14 years on death row, Clemente never stopped trying to clear his name. And he wasn't wrong either. As it turns out, Samantha Schell's daughter, prior to the murder, was diagnosed with intermittent explosive disorder.
Within inches of the mother's body and in a bathroom where the state argued the killer cleaned up is the daughter's blood, a trail of the daughter's blood going to the bathroom, and then the mother's blood on the outside of the daughter's window. And there's in the doctor's notes, a few years before this happened, where she says to her mother, "I'm gonna fucking kill you if I ever get out of here. I'll fucking kill all of you." Then we find out that she has confessed all over town. We had people coming in all over the place, testifying, affidavits that she said, "I killed my fucking mother and my grandmother, I'll do it to you."
With such irrefutable evidence implicating Cheryl's daughter, the day finally arrived for Clemente.
I do know that nobody believed me back then. No one. Besides my mother, nobody believed me, and I thank you for it. From the bottom of my heart.
He holds back tears and immediately heads towards friends and family to celebrate.
But today is a brighter day, a new day, and I got good hopes for the future.
This is Esteban Carpio. The police were questioning him for the stabbing of an 85-year-old woman in Rhode Island. In the interview room was Carpio and 2 detectives. One of the detectives left the room to get water for Carpio, leaving just him and Detective Sergeant James Allen in the room. Carpio grabbed Allen's gun and then shot him twice, killing him. He then jumped out of a window which was 3 stories high and made a run for it. But he was apprehended just 45 minutes later. At his arraignment, Carpio came in wearing a mask designed to stop the offender from spitting and biting at others, with also his face being in rough shape. It stunned the courtroom. It wasn't so much Carpio with a shocking reaction, more so his family members making accusations of police brutality.
Step off.
Not guilty, Stephen! It's police brutality. He was mentally ill, and he needed help, and we couldn't get it. We tried and tried, and he didn't deserve this.
An FBI investigation concluded that the police did not use excessive force, and that Carpio's injuries were sustained due to his jump from the 3rd floor of a building and struggle with the law enforcement.
Every day, I face the facts of what I did and what happened.
He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. This is Darrell Brooks, who was convicted of killing 6 people and injuring dozens of others after he drove his SUV into a Christmas parade in Waukesha, Wisconsin. Reportedly during his reckless driving, he reached speeds of over 30 miles per hour, and the prosecution argued that his driving rampage was intentional.
He plowed through 68 different people. He kept going until he got to the end, and there was no more bodies to hit. It was intentional.
After Brooks was arrested and charged, Brooks decided to represent himself in court.
If you are allowed to represent yourself in this case, sir, you will not have attorneys assisting you. They are gone from this case. Do you understand that?
I think I would probably be better served representing myself.
Throughout the trial, Brooks was removed multiple times for constant interruptions and outbursts. It was here that his real personality was shown when he starts to laugh during a witness testimony.
He told Erica that he was gonna find her and he's gonna kill her.
Now, back in the courtroom, Brooks has an outburst as he didn't like how the district attorney pronounced the word defendant.
I would like to provide the defendant and the court.
So that had to be said. The defendant. I got one ear that work and I heard that.
This is to benefit you, that
no, it's
you
not.
understand
Ain't none of
your
this to benefit me.
And now Brooks is clearly frustrated. He decides to have the stare down with the judge.
I need to take a break. This man right now is having a stare down with me. It's very disrespectful. He pounded his fist. Frankly, it makes me scared.
The jury quickly found Brooks guilty of all 76 charges against him, and he was given 6 life sentences, plus more than 700 additional years in prison. This is Shondell Jackson. He's in the Milwaukee County Courthouse at his sentencing for being convicted of murdering a university student. Reportedly, 18-year-old Jackson and his friend were hunting for victims when they saw Potter leave a bar. Nathan Potter, the 21-year-old victim, was a college student at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. They stalked him, accosted him, and demanded money. When Jackson learned that Potter didn't have any cash, Jackson shot him, which killed him. Officials said Jackson fled to Mississippi the day after Potter's murder. Jackson's uncle reportedly tipped off the police on his whereabouts, where he was arrested. When he was on trial, you can see Jackson make gestures toward the victim's family. And when he was escorted out of the courtroom, you can see him smiling at the family. Now, moments before the sentencing, Jackson's mother told the court she first heard about the killing on TV.
When I saw it on the news, I even cried. I'm like, oh my God, I can't imagine what that mother is going through. I never had a clue that my child had anything to do with it. My son is not a monster. He is not a monster.
Jackson now apologizes for what he has done.
I apologize for my behaviors. Please don't take my life from me.
When the judge announced life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, Jackson has an outburst. As the deputies restrain Jackson, you can hear one of Jackson's family members scream to the victim's family. When Jackson is serving life in prison without parole, his friend pleaded guilty to acting as a lookout and was sentenced to 12 years in prison.
And she takes out a knife and slashes poor Elizabeth's body. And then to make sure that the job is complete, she takes the knife and slices her from ear to ear.
This is Elisa Bustamante. She was a troubled 15-year-old girl who lived with her grandparents and siblings in St. Martins, Missouri. On October 21, 2009, Bustamante lured her 9-year-old neighbor, Elizabeth Olton, into the woods behind her house.
She chose extremely close-up, messy methods. Again, very atypical for a female, and even more atypical for a young female like Alyssa was, because she was just a teenager. And the fact that she didn't do it at a distance, she didn't use poison, the types of things that we know female murderers to use, but in fact she used a knife, and then she strangled them on top of using the knife.
She strangled, stabbed, and slit the throat of the innocent girl, then buried her in a pre-dug grave.
Elizabeth, she must have screamed out. Now she's making noise. How do you stop somebody from screaming after being beat and beat? You choke them. The most personal way somebody can kill somebody is by strangulation. It's up close, it's personal. And you're squeezing the life out of somebody. And her hands are around little Elizabeth's neck. And Elizabeth, I can only imagine, is fighting for her life. And then not only does Alyssa strangle Elizabeth, it's not good enough for her. She wants to see and step back and take a look at her work. And she takes out a knife and slashes poor Elizabeth's body. And then to make sure that the job is complete on this lifeless body, she takes the knife and slices her from ear to ear.
She then went to a church dance as if nothing had happened. If you thought Bustamante's crimes were reprehensible, brace yourself for her shocking conduct during the proceedings. The police found Olton's body 2 days later, after Bustamante confessed to the murder. She was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and armed criminal action. She pleaded guilty to a reduced charge of second-degree murder in exchange for avoiding a trial and a possible life sentence without parole. At her sentencing hearing, Bustamante apologized to Olson's family and said she regretted her actions. However, the judge was not moved by her remorse and sentenced her to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 35 years. She will be eligible for release in 2054 when she will be 60 years old.
Your son is the victim and the killer is your granddaughter. Can you talk about that?
Well, she's not my granddaughter. She was a troubled kid. How troubled, we had no idea.
This is Sierra Halseth and Aaron Guerrero. They're facing multiple charges, including murder with a deadly weapon, arson, robbery with a deadly weapon, conspiracy to conduct robbery, and multiple counts of fraudulent use of credit or debit cards at the Regional Justice Center in Las Vegas.
On April 9th, 2021, police arrived over in Dunphy Court. This is a single-family residence, the house of Daniel Halseth and his daughter Sierra. And when the police arrive, they find a body in the garage.
The teenage couple murdered Sierra's father, 45-year-old Daniel Halseth. They stabbed him over 60 times and attempted to burn his body and house.
One of his wrists appears as if it was partially dismembered, as if someone tried to literally saw through Daniel to take him apart.
Then they took his debit card and fled to Salt Lake City, indulged themselves, and opened a YouTube channel where they callously shared information like this.
Day 3 after murdering somebody.
Whoa! Don't put that on the camera.
It was worth it.
And we had sex a lot today.
It was worth it. I got plenty of sex with it.
The teen dated in 2020, but their parents did not approve of the relationship, forcing them to end it.
Where did the evil come that was bred into a soul that murders their own father?
On April 9th, 2021, Daniel's lifeless body was discovered in the garage of his Las Vegas home. The teenagers were subsequently apprehended in Salt Lake City.
About 8:35 in the morning on the 13th, transit police encounter Aaron and Sierra using a tram. They're making out. They're just kind of living their best life on the tram in Utah. What happens essentially is they're asked for their tickets and they don't have any tickets. The transit authority asks them for their name or identification and Aaron and Sierra provide it. They run a name check, up pops the warrant. And so Aaron and Sierra are taken into custody by Utah Transit Authority for the murder of Daniel and are promptly then ultimately brought back to Las Vegas. They get caught by just simply giving over their names and not paying for a tram ticket.
Throughout the court proceedings, the behavior of Sierra was starkly different from that of Aaron. Aaron Guerrero seems to be emotionally breaking down. When he was allowed to speak, he had this to say.
I ask for forgiveness as I get sentenced today, and I hope it brings you a little peace.
Meanwhile, Sierra Halseth appeared disinterested, bored, and detached from the gravity of the situation. She claimed that her father had physically and sexually abused her.
He locks me in place and starts pushing me and hitting me around.
Eventually, they were both found guilty by District Judge Tiara Jones.
55 days credit for time served. That is a total aggregate sentence of life in the Nevada Department of Corrections with the possibility of parole after 22 years of good service.
For Sierra's grandmother, a lot has changed.
You're in a tough spot because your son is the victim and the killer is your granddaughter. Can you talk about that?
Well, she's not my granddaughter.
This is Larry Nassar. He is now an American convicted sex offender and former osteopathic physician. For 18 years, he was the team doctor of the United States Women's National Gymnastics team, giving him access to hundreds of girls and young women who he abused.
I really feel that my entire family has gone through hell and back these last few months because of what Larry Nassar did to both of my sisters and I years ago. I have known Larry Nassar for most of my life. He once was someone I had always trusted.
I would ask you to, as part of this sentencing, to grant me 5 minutes in a locked room with this demon. Would you do that? Yes or no?
No, sir.
Would you give me 1 minute?
You know that I can't do that. That's not how it is.
Well, I'm going to have to get something out.
Stay down. Stay down. I understand.
Let me have that son of a bitch.
I understand, but stay down.
I want that.
Stop fighting. Behind your back. Put your hands behind your back.
I want that son of a bitch.
Put your hands behind your back.
I don't. Give me 1 minute with that bastard.
Yeah, go ahead. You're good. You're good.
So professional. It's fun. 1 minute.
Relax, sir.
Relax.
Take it easy, buddy.
Just relax. Okay, now we're gonna kind of let up, okay? You have to let up too, okay? All right, sit up. Get on your side. And sit up.
Where is he? 1, 2, 3, up. What if this happened to you guys?
Not behave like that. No one can behave like this. I want to make sure it's crystal clear. I'm sure Judge Craig.
You haven't lived through it, lady.
You cannot behave like this.
Nassar was sentenced to 40 to 175 years in prison for various charges, to be served after a separate 60-year sentence. That means he'll serve at least 100 years in prison, effectively a life sentence. And for the father, he won't face any criminal charges.
I came here in support of my daughters. I knew they were going to read a statement. I didn't know what all was in it. They would not let me see it ahead of time. I've dealt with my daughters as of late very delicately. I'm realizing they may never trust a man again. Then I got to hear that, and I look over here, and Larry Nassar's shaking his head no, like it didn't happen. Who would put themselves through this? It didn't happen. I lost control. I apologize 100 times.